curious, did things start feeling less consistent right after you delegated the customer service, the customer experience? Most leaders assume that's just part of growth. But what if delegation didn't just move work, it changed how decisions were made, or it changed how decisions get made? You see, delegation is usually framed as a solution. You build a team so you are not the bottleneck, so the business can grow without you being everywhere, you answering all the calls. And that part is true. But what is rarely talked about is that delegation quietly changes everything. When a client experience moves from one person's memory, one person's head, to many, something subtle happens. Work stops being directly executed and starts being interpreted. Delegation is supposed to make running your business easier, but that's often where drift actually begins. That's where problems begin. Delegation doesn't just move work, it changes how work gets decided. It changes how work gets interpreted. And that's the problem with delegation. You see, when you start a business, your standards live in your head as a business owner, the business operator. You can make corrections instantly. Context is shared without explanation because no one is answering to you. Because in most cases, you don't have to listen to anyone. You just make all the decisions. You just make all the calls. But then after delegation, standards must be translated. Context has to travel. Judgment then fills in the gaps that exist. And judgment varies even among people with very capable abilities. So interpretation is hidden in the cost of interpretation. And that's the problem. And this happens all the time. And it's not because your team is careless or your team don't care. It's because two competent people can interpret work differently. And it happens all the time in the workplace when the rules are not fully or clearly defined or designed. This is not a team problem. This is a design problem. Variation doesn't show up at big moment. It shows up in how things are explained, how issues are handled, how things get prioritized under pressure, and then what's considered good enough to be prioritized. Each decision makes sense locally, like in their various departments, wherever things are happening. But globally, as an organization, the experience starts to drift. Variations doesn't enter loudly. It enters in small, reasonable decisions that get made every single day in small teams, in those cubicles, and in those departments. And that is why leaders feel pulled back a lot of the time in their businesses. They are not trying to control people. They are only trying to act as the connective tissue between intention and execution. And again, it works. It works until scale begins to happen, growth. You add more distance because that growth adds more distance. And most leaders are not micromanaging. They are only trying to compensate for the missing clarity that exists when they delegated. And that's the problem. And so as a result, clients don't see how hard your team is working or how hard your team works. In fact, customers don't care about that. They experience outcomes and reliability. So even when results are technically fine, results are great, inconsistency creates hesitation because to the customer, any inconsistency is a risk. And that hesitation feel like they feel it quietly, which then changes their behavior. Clients don't experience your effort. In fact, they experience your consistency or the lack thereof. And that's the problem with many businesses. But here's the most important distinction. Delegation won't break anything. However, it will expose what was never fully designed or defined. So in the next video, we'll address the most common mistake businesses make at this stage, trying to solve a structural problem with people. Delegation doesn't cause the problem, it just reveals it. So if you want to know more about delegation, watch the next video to understand why hiring better people won't fix this.